Welcome to Real World, Real Talk with Dr. D.Z. Cofield. The show represents captivating conversations and insightful information to encourage and inspire you with all you need to become the best you can possibly be. And now, your host for Real World, Real Talk, Dr. D.Z. Cofield.
Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and you're listening to your member-supported public radio station, your number one source for jazz and more. KTSU 90.9, we are your community station, and we've got a powerful show lined up for you. Now, listen, if you have a young person in your house who is getting ready to go to college, if you have a young person in your house who is looking for a viable and meaningful post-secondary educational experience, life learning, if you have a young person who is trying to figure out not just where they're going to school, but how they're going to pay for it. Now, that young person may not be wondering about that, but you as a parent or maybe a grandparent, you may be thinking, yeah, we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for this. You don't want to miss this show. And if you know somebody who has a young person in their home who is looking at going to school, looking for that viable and meaningful post-secondary educational experience, you want to have them tune in. And they can tune in anywhere they are via the World Wide Web. Just go to ktsusradio.com and they can listen live. If you're in the Houston metropolitan area, there's a great event that's coming up on Friday, November the 11th. That's next Friday. You want to make sure that you show up at the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church for a free event. Over the years, this event has provided over $15 million in scholarships to young people, to schools around the country, not just here in Houston. They're all over the country, and there are young people who are benefiting from these programs as they are interacting with colleges, HBCUs, PWIs, the like, Army, military. Listen, you want to make sure that your child is in the house and is in the room. Now, just a couple of housekeeping matters before we go any further. If you like to follow me during the week, you can follow me on Instagram, IG, at DZ Cofield. You can follow me on Facebook at DZ Cofield. And you can follow me on Twitter at, you guessed it, DZ Cofield. This Tuesday is Election Day, November the 8th. If you have not early voted, it is too late. Early voting ended on Friday, November the 4th. I voted early because I did not want to take a chance that something would come up, something would happen on the 8th, and my vote not be counted. We have done shows over the last couple of weeks with the League of Women Voters. There have been a number of rallies to get people out to vote. It's not enough to register to vote. You've got to go and make your voice heard, and your voice is heard when you get out and vote. Now, it's too late to register to vote in this election. But if you are a registered voter, I want to encourage you to get out on Tuesday and vote. The truth of the matter is, in elections in Harris County, and I'm sure other parts of the country, we have seen as low as 6-7% of registered voters actually coming out to vote, which means what? If the other 93% of people would come out and vote, literally elections could be turned upside down. And I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. I'm just talking about getting out and voting and making your voice heard. Stop complaining on the sideline if you're not getting out to vote. The beauty of voting in Harris County is you can vote anywhere. You don't have to go to a specific place or be tied to a specific location. You can go anywhere and you can vote. So I want to encourage you to get out and vote. Now, listen, this Friday, November the 11th, starting at 9 a.m. and it's going all day, y'all. Infinite Scholars are going to be in Houston. The Infinite Scholars program has distributed over $15 million through 500 plus accredited colleges, universities, and vocational schools. That's right. $15 million, colleges, university, and vocational schools. I hear a lot of people saying, you know what? I don't know if college is for my child. I've heard a lot of kids say, college is not for me right now. But guess what? When you graduate from high school, you need some kind of post-secondary educational training and or experience. So I don't care if it's a certification, a vocational program, you've got to do something to prepare yourself to make it in the world. The Infinite Scholars Free Scholarship Fair is going on Friday, November the 11th, 2022. That's this Friday at the Good Hope Church. And the Infinite Scholars, their slogan I love, the possibilities are infinite. And I am happy to have with me in the studio today several people to give us insight into why this program is so important, especially for students of color. And it's giving you an opportunity to lock in to a lot of schools that you may not know are available and tie you into money. And this money is going to be given if you come prepared. Listen, they're going to be giving scholarship money on the spot, y'all, on the spot. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to tarry. If you bring the right material with you, if you bring the right information with you, scholarships will be offered on the spot. I'm happy to have with me a group of people who work with the Infinite Scholars, and I'm gonna have them introduce themselves. Let me start with the one and only Dr. Dorsey. She has been with us in the past. Dr. Dorsey is on the road, but she's here to share with us. They're actually at an Infinite Scholar event in another city, and they're on their way to Houston. Dr. Dorsey, welcome to Real World Real Talk. I should say welcome back to Real World Real Talk. It is so great to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Cofield, so much for having me again. I had such a fantastic time this time. So when the invitation was extended, of course I accepted.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking time to be with us. Introduce those who are with you, and then we're going to have Christopher Knight introduce himself. But first, tell our listening audience about you and your relationship with Infinite Scholars.
Okay, Dr. Cofield, I am Dr. Laura Dorsey, and I am the Vice President of Mission and Engagement for Infinite Scholars. And what that really means is that Infinite Scholars is a nonprofit organization, and we facilitate scholarship fairs across the country. As Dr. Cofield said, today we're in Birmingham, Alabama, and as soon as we leave here, we're on our road and we're headed to New Orleans. It is my responsibility that no matter where you find an Infinite Scholars Fair, whether we come to Houston or whether we're here at Birmingham, it all has the same that message that we have, and that we're following the same mission and engagement. And so whether it's Detroit, Atlanta, DC, Houston, it's all going to be the same if it's an Infinite Scholars, if I have anything to do with it. And that's my responsibility. Because I'm getting older, and okay, because you know how the young people think that old people can't do anything, Dr. Cofield. So they think that I should be traveling by myself. So I have with me here Tashik Hawkins. Tashik is my right hand. She tries not to have any title, but if I'm the vice president, she's the assistant vice president. But she really sits on the executive council of Infinite Scholars. One of the things that I also do is that I am a huge proponent of the military as an educational option. So when you know people who know people who know people, that's why we have on this side, Damon Brooks is with us. Damon Brooks is with the Army ROTC, and he is making sure that anything that's related to the Army, all of those questions are answered, and making sure that the Army as an option are here. So I have the two of them here. We have been here in Birmingham all morning long. We got here yesterday. We have had a fantastic day today. We ran out of all the material that we have here in Birmingham. And we have multiple students walk out of here with $100,000 in scholarship information today. And so it's been a fantastic day.
Wow, that's awesome. Christopher Knight, introduce yourself, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Knight. I am a 27-year veteran, I guess you would say, educator in the greater Houston area. and I'm actually the Houston liaison between the event here in Houston and Infinite Scholars. So I guess you say I'm a glorified volunteer educator.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate it. It was Christopher that initially reached out to me, concerned because they were challenged to find a sponsor who would welcome all of these colleges and universities into the area and give them an opportunity to share their information and an opportunity to bless young people. So let's talk about Infinite Scholars, Dr. Dorsey. First, give us a little history about Infinite Scholars for those who may not be aware of it. I know we have some people who are listening, who are calling family members and friends who are saying, hey, girl, you better listen to Dr. Cofield tonight because, man, this is going to bless your grandbaby. This is going to bless your baby. More importantly, it's going to bless the adults who are going to be paying them bills moving forward and also help their young people. We're talking about the crushing amount of student loan debt. And when you open up the door for people to be able to get that free money, those scholarships, that's life-changing as these young people move forward. So talk about the history of Infinite Scholars, if you will.
All right, Dr. Cofield. Infinite Scholars is actually a 20-year organization. It was founded in 2003. Our CEO, Thomas Owsley, was an English teacher in Ferguson, Missouri. And everybody knows about Ferguson, Missouri and all the things that were going on in Ferguson. He was teaching 12th grade English, and he was finding that his students were woefully unprepared to go to college. And some of them didn't even have the thought process that they wanted to go to college because they couldn't figure out how to afford it. At the same time, he had colleges who were reaching out to him saying, we've got minority scholarships, but we can't find any good students to give them to. He said, I've got a whole classroom full of students. If you want to give away college scholarships, come speak to my students in my classroom. So with that, he had a college in Ohio come down to Ferguson, speak to his students. And every year he kept adding more and more colleges. He just wanted it to be a Missouri organization when he first got started. But somewhere along the line, some people saw that the model was there. So in 2008, he came to Florida. I got involved with him. I built up Florida now that we have more fairs in the state of Florida than we have anywhere. But it is just the opportunity for students to be able to advocate for themselves, for students and their parents to be able to speak directly to colleges. You can send in applications all day long and you just become a name on the paper. But if you can stand in front of a college and university and be able to explain to yourself, for example, Dr. Cofield, if a student has a 3.5 GPA, the college may say, that's just an average, that's a B+. But Dr. Cofield, if the student was in the 9th grade, maybe not paying as much attention to school as they should be, and we know 9th graders might not be able to, and so their GPA may not have been as high in the 9th grade. It may have been 2.0. But now if you look at that transcript, that student is a 3.0 or 4.0 student right now. Well, they can actually tell the college, don't look at just my overall GPA. Take a look at who I am right now. Don't take a look at who I was. And we know the scripture always tells us about that. Don't take a look at who I was. Take a look at who I am right now. We also know statistically some people don't test well. So if you look at ACT or SAT test scores, that may not be a good indication as to whether our students, especially our Black and brown students, are successful. You're able to talk directly to a college, advocate for themselves, and be able to say, this is who I really am. All I'm looking for is an opportunity. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm looking for a hand up. And if you help me, I will be the best alumni, not the student that you have. I will be the less alumni that you can actually pick. And that's what we try to do.
All right, Miss T, you sitting there next to Dr. Dorsey, smiling away. I want you to talk about why you are involved as a server, as a volunteer, as a staff person. You make a commitment to Infinite Scholars. Why do you do that?
Hi, Dr. Cofield. I went to St. Louis for the fair probably a year ago. And when I saw the children and their parents, and they were dressed up and they were ready and they had this glow, that it was unreal to me to see it, to know that they would be offered an opportunity to go to college. And from that point on, I was all about it.
Wow. Now, Mr. Brooks, talk about the ROTC and that as an option for young people who may not feel like they're ready to go to college. They may not have the maturity, but they know they need something to do positive after they graduate from high school.
Yes, sir. How you doing, Dr. Cofield? Just like Infinite Scholars, there's a lot of programs that didn't have Black and brown students in there. The Army suffered that same institution as far as having Black and brown officers. So you have enlisted people, you have kids in school that see military, but don't see military soldiers and officers that look like them. So the Army ROTC is offering a lot of scholarships, not only for everyone. So the ACT scores, the SAT scores, yes, it's a requirement to take them, but there's more opportunities. Most people see the Army ROTC as kicking in doors. We want you to get your education. This isn't the Army that it used to be 20, 30 years ago. We are a more smarter Army. We're dealing with things high tech, just like in everyday life. We have the doctors, the lawyers, we have the mechanical engineers, we have the aerospace personnel as well. So we have all walks of life, and the Army is an avenue. I tell kids all the time, you can use a pencil to dig a ditch, but if you had the right tool for the job, that shovel or that backhoe, you can dig that ditch a lot faster. So the Army is an opportunity, a tool to utilize to get your scholarship and get what you need in life.
You know, it's interesting you say that. One of the things that I've learned, many times we don't start our educational journey with the end in mind. And I always try to encourage parents, even preschool parents, to really think about a course for your child, even while they're still in nursery school, while they're in preschool, because you're setting a path with them as their neurological synapses are developing. You're actually coding them in a way and getting them ready. I want you to talk a little bit, Mr. Brooks, about the things that the military can prepare you for after military life, because I think so many people just think about the military and serving at that moment, or I don't want to be in the Army for 20 years. And they don't think about the military as a stepping stone to being successful in life, both with their education as well as the skills and jobs that they will acquire as they serve in the military. Can you talk about that just for a moment?
One thing I love being a soldier, I served 20 years myself, so I'm a retiree, I'm a veteran as well. I love the leadership skills that you get. Unlike every areas of life, the different areas of life, that you can go to school, you can work a job, but the leadership aspect that you get in the military is none like it. We're the number one leader producing factory and organization. Because in the military, one thing I noticed, once I went to basic training, got to my duty station, learned how to be a soldier, and I came back home, I remember going in the kitchen and seeing the water on in the kitchen. People walked in and out, and I asked the question, why is the water on? Not, oh, I see the water on, someone else turned it on, so I turned it off. It teaches you those skills to let's serve, let's conserve. Not only am I going to see a problem, what am I going to do to fix that problem? So we're taught to think ahead, not only to just see the problem and panic, but to have a reaction to fix that problem.
Okay. And Dr. Cofield, let me add to that too, because one of the reasons that besides the fact that I'm in love with Damon because he helps take care of me and Tishy too, is that I am the mother of a military family. So I come from, the military family. My daughter spent 23 and a half years in the military, and anybody will tell you that she's a fantastic and amazing. She's my child, of course, I think she is. But she went into the military at 17. She was able to retire at 37, 39 years old. Retire, Dr. Cofield, at 37, 39 years old with a full benefit. She has now parlayed all of the information that she got from being, and she sits behind a desk doing the same human resources that other organizations take. That's what she does. She has now just been promoted to a GS-15, which Damon will tell you is a 6-figure salary. So now she's got the 6-figure salary on top of her military retirement benefits. She has traveled all over the world, and she like her mama, so she's taken her mother with her. It's just amazing. And she is just 48 years old. 48 years old, and is easily, between her and the son-in-law, making over $200,000 starting in the military. Wow. As an enlisted person.
Yes.
That I think is so amazing. And again, thinking with the end in mind, one of the things that we have been working on, Dr. Dorsey, since we last talked, was helping people get through and get past generational poverty. And that people who are in generational poverty, who have never seen anybody around them who benefited from education, and I'm thinking post-secondary education now, in particular, who would be the first person in their family to go to college, to get them to see the benefits, to get them to experience the differences, and to be able to move forward. Christopher Knight, you and I connected first around a young man who is actually at Langston University. And we've been keeping tabs on Donovan. He's moving into his last year, but he started with you in the band camp. I don't think he had played an instrument when he got started with you, and got a scholarship and is part of the marching band at Langston University now. But talk about why this has been important for you to become and get a part of.
Well, I'm actually a recipient of what Dr. Dorsey's vision for Infinite Scholars is. I'm from the great state of Mississippi, and my grandmother was a sharecropper that had 13 students, or 13, I'm in school right now, so I said students, but 13 kids, which included my father. And they all lived in a one-room house. And she made a decision that she wanted better for her kids. And she moved from the country of Mississippi to the city, which is Jackson. And all 13 of her kids actually graduated from not only from high school, but they went to college, and they had post-secondary graduate degrees. The grandkids, it's our obligation based on those sacrifices that were made before to continue that legacy. And it's important for me to see that, because I've been on the front lines of education in the greater Houston area for almost like 27 years. And all of our students are not recipients of equality, in my opinion. And so I want to make sure that those students, like Dr. Dorsey has spoken of, that may have had like a bad year or factors just going on in the environments, get the same equality when it comes to matriculating to post-secondary education. And so I've been a band director for almost like 27 years. And I would say at least 99% of my students have gone on to college and graduated from college, not just attended, but they graduated.
Yeah, no, that's a great testimony for you to be able to pay it forward in that way. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. DZ Cofield, and we have with us in the studio the Infinite Scholars program. They are coming to Houston on November the 11th, beginning at 9 a.m. Listen, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a minute. We're going to give you information on how you can register your young person to be part of this. We're contacting schools, but there are a lot of counselors who are not making this available to the students who need it, because the truth of the matter is many counselors may not see the potential, the gifts, the genius in the kids that are right around them. If those kids don't have the 4.0, if they're not coming from that kind of family, they don't see the genius in our kids. And you have to see the genius in your own children and have to advocate and fight for them. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to 90.9 KTSU. We are your community station.
Download our new I Am Hope mobile app in order to get or stay connected to our Good Hope family. To download the new app, you can visit our website at goodhope.org and click on the banner, or you can text Good Hope MBC app to 77977, or you can scan the QR code on the posters in the lobby or Center for Hope, or you can also search Good Hope MBC or I Am Hope in your Apple or Google Play Store. Let's continue to take hope to the world.
Welcome back to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. DZ Cofield, and you're listening to your member-supported public radio station, your number one source for jazz and more, KTSU 90.9 on the FM dial and ktsuradio.com. Don't forget, this Tuesday, November the 8th, is Election Day. If you did not vote early, it's too late. It ended on November the 4th, but it's not too late to have your voice heard. So make sure you go out and vote. In Harris County, Texas, you can vote at any voting location. You don't have to vote at a specific one. So if you know your location typically has long lines, man, listen, find one that doesn't. Go to several if you need to, but make sure you make your voice heard. Make sure you make your vote count. We're in the studio today with Infinite Scholars. Infinite Scholars is a nonprofit organization that links colleges and universities to students and helps them get scholarships. Some $15 million has been given over the years through the Infinite Scholars program, and we're happy to have Dr. Dorsey with us, who's a vice president of Infinite Scholars. She has some guests with her, and Christopher Knight, who is the Houston liaison. This event will be held on Friday, November the 11th, beginning at 9 a.m., going until 12:30. There'll be a little break for lunch, and then beginning again at 2 o'clock to the early evening. Dr. Dorsey, let's talk about first where you are and what you have been doing and where you're going on your way to Houston.
Okay, well, right now, Dr. Cofield, we're actually in Birmingham, Alabama. We have been in Birmingham since 9 o'clock this morning, Damon. We're about 9 o'clock this morning. We had, they reached out to a lot of the surrounding rural counties, and they had the schools actually were busing students in. I know that we had over 500 students because Damon brought us material for 400 students, and we ran out in the first 2 hours. Wow. And so the students came in, they were prepared. Like I said, we've got serious videos of students who are getting over $100,000 in scholarships. Guidance counselors came in with students, parents came in with students. We just had a fantastic time. Tashika and I just came back from Atlanta. We actually spent 4 days in Atlanta. We ended up seeing over 2,000 students in Atlanta in that 4-day time period. It was just, just really crazy. Again, they came from all various counties, busing the students in over a 4-day period. We will leave here immediately this evening and head to New Orleans. There is actual a fair in New Orleans tomorrow. Tashika and I then will go to Tampa, Florida on Sunday, where we're going to speak to 3 different high schools for 3 different days. We'll get back on a plane. We'll be in Houston. Okay, and then when we leave Houston, we're going to go back to DC, and we're going to be there as we prepare for January, because in January, we're going to be in Florida for 4 days. We're going to crisscross the entire state of Florida, and then we end up our season in St. Louis and Kansas City. So,
I think what's interesting, Dr. Dorsey, because that's a schedule that nobody, even people who like to travel, would envy. But let me say this. I think for so many students, I know especially those students who may be the first generation in their family to go to college, they don't even have a clue about the process. And for somebody who may be thinking, man, y'all starting this early, because I know a lot of people, they wait till they get to graduation and then they're in June or July and then they're like, I think I want to go to college. Why is it important for these kids and their families to get started early in this process?
Dr. Cofield, I am glad you said that, because if you take a look, a lot of times, sometimes it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And a lot of times, if you really understand the process and understand it, and I come from, a school in New York, in a perfect world, students, especially students that don't look like our students, they start this process in the 9th grade. By the 10th grade, they have a real clue about what they're doing. Again, I use my daughter as an example. She has known from the 8th grade that this is what she wanted to do. Dr. Cofield, by the 10th grade, they know what they're doing. By the 11th grade, they're already doing college visits. They're filling out applications. The 12th grade is supposed to be your coach year. This is supposed to be about the prom and all of the things. But what we're finding is that our students are waiting until the 12th grade. They don't take the ACT or SAT until the 12th grade. And again, that's when the school offers them. But if parents understand, you can spend $40, which is less than your cable bill, and it may be up to $50 now, to take the ACT. And we'll let the rhetoric say, oh, schools are saying you don't have to take the ACT or SAT to be accepted. Of course, you don't have to take them to be accepted. But when you're looking for any kind of money, they want to know what's your test scores. They want to know what's your GPA. And so we don't educate our students earlier. Dr. Cofield, by the time they're in the 12th grade, there's nothing you can do with that 2.5 GPA.
Yeah.
But if I could start telling you in the 9th grade or the 10th grade how important that GPA is to be able to do that. And Dr. Cofield, even if it's the very best students, we did a statistic, and we're doing this in our presentation in Tampa. And forgive me if I digress. There are 271,000 high schools in the United States. That means there's 271,000 valedictorians. There's 271,000 salutatorians. And if you multiply that by the number of top 10, it's 27,100. I'm losing my mind with the numbers. Okay. But if you look at that, these are just the top 10. These are the students who already know where they're going. Yeah. We're looking for those students who still don't have a clue, who still don't have an option, who think that there's not an option. And so we're here with Damon to tell them that the military is here. Tashik is telling them, look, don't listen to the old lady. She's doing our social media to make sure that she reaches them out. So she does the ticky-tocking and the reels and whatever, to be able to reach students where they are. That's what we have to do. And we cannot wait until the last minute. Dr. Cofield, you're not going to wait until the last minute. If you have to do a sermon on Sunday, you're not going to wait until like Saturday evening to do your sermon on Sunday. You're going to be working on that throughout the week. Well, it's the same thing. If we start telling our students early, telling the parents early, the possibilities are infinite.
Yeah, let's talk about what they need to bring. And for those of you who are watching on various social media platforms, is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. But for those of you who are listening on the terrestrial line, students should bring multiple copies of transcripts, ACT, SAT test scores, letters of recommendation, an essay titled "Why I Want to Attend College," and a resume. So let's talk about that ACT, SAT piece, because you're absolutely right. I remember in middle school taking the PSAT and only learning later on when I got into high school that, kids, man, they take that SAT multiple times, right? There's no limit on how many times you can take it. And traditionally, the more you take it, typically the better you do as you become more comfortable with it. And they're going to take those best test scores. You want people to come, students to bring their transcripts, to bring their test scores. Let's talk about letters of recommendation, why that is so important, because I think for many kids, they just think about the academic piece. They don't necessarily think about the social piece. So talk about the letters of recommendation, you and Mr. Brooks, why that's important when you get to see, what somebody has to say about a young person.
Dr. Cofield, the thing is, at the end of the day, this is really an interview. If you were looking for a job interview, they ask you for references. Okay, so guess what? It's the same thing of colleges. It's an interview. They're interviewing you to see what kind of student you're going to be, what kind of alumni. Because one of the things I really want the students to know, they're not seeing you as a student. They want to know, how are you going to graduate and how are you going to represent our community when you graduate? And Damon, you could talk the same thing as the military. We want to put you here, but how are you going to represent the military when you get out? Well, who knows you better than somebody, whether it's the pastor of the church or whether it's a counselor, or whether it's the person who does your part-time job, somebody that's going to be able to vouch for you that says, yes, you're a good person, and here's like the double checks that says that this is why you're a good person. And the other thing too, Dr. Cofield, if you can get a letter of recommendation, that means that you've been able to articulate yourself to someone as to the values that you have. If you can articulate yourself to someone else to do a letter of recommendation, you're going to be the same person that's going to be articulating yourself in front of a college and university and being able to sell yourself.
Mr. Brooks, go ahead.
I also like letters of recommendation because I tell students, write your own letter of recommendation. You know what you've done. And if you can write and articulate what you've done, the details, both on the academic and the athleticism, now you can articulate what you've done, pass it on to that advisor, that teacher that you want to sign off on it, and let them add whatever their pieces are so they don't have to do a lot of the work. If I can pass something to someone, all they need to do is add a few things and sign off on it. I'm not impeding on their time. And I've done my own due diligence so I can articulate what I've done myself when I'm standing in front of that recruiter or the college.
Yeah. Ms. T, I want you to talk a little bit about this essay that they have to write, especially because many of our young people in the educational system that we have don't do a lot of writing. They know how to express themselves orally, typically much better than they do in writing. When you all ask a young person to write an essay titled "Why I Want to Attend College," why is that important for them to be able to articulate?
Dr. Cofield, I think that it's important for them to be able to express why college is important to them. And it also helps the colleges to filter, if you will, which students really want to attend college. Everybody has lifestyles. And in those essays, they get to express the type of lifestyle. And because the scholarships are awarded, not just, merit-based, sometimes it helps the representatives also award scholarships based on those letters as well.
So students have to bring their transcripts. And I love what you said, Dr. Dorsey, earlier, that transcript can tell a story. It can tell the story of a person who was a freshman, a sophomore, may have been playing around in school, had their 0.5 GPA or whatever the case may be. But those last 2 years, they really buckled down and really turned things around to bring a resume. And I want to talk about that resume. One of the things that we're doing now, we're working with high schools to give these young people community service opportunities, opportunities to be mentored, opportunities to give back, especially in this day and time that we live in when people are very self-centered and self-focused. Christopher, I want you to chime in here, if you will, just about helping students to give back. You're prepping your students right now for a Christmas concert, and you have students who play at various levels. Earlier, we heard one of the kids getting ready to play Jingle Bells, right? But I want you to talk about your whole philosophy, like how you take young people who are just being introduced to an instrument and allow that student to begin that process and to grow and to make their way to, like Donovan, playing in a university band right now. Talk about that process and how you move students to help them find themselves, not just in the classroom, but even beyond the classroom.
So with music education, most people look at music as just one faceted. Music, we're teaching math, science, and history as well. And so I use music as a tool to get them from point A to point B, even at a young age, as far as like sixth grade, going up to college. Most of our schools that I've taught in are what they call or designated as Title I. That's based on demographics and economics. And I know that most of our students, if they are fortunate enough to go to college, they're going to come out with a lot of debt. And so to alleviate that debt, one of the means is, for me, is getting those kids to go to a university and march in the band or play in the band. Those scholarships can range between $50,000 to $70,000. And so a lot of times what I do is I show my students and my parents what the end is going to be by actually taking them to a college football game or university concert, and so that those kids can see themselves in that. Also, people like Donovan, who happens to be a member of your church, who is now at Langston University, he comes back every summer and works with the same kids that he grew up in the same neighborhood with to show them, if you do this, then you can help. I can help you matriculate to that university that you can go to break those generational curses.
Yeah, I love that because the truth of the matter is, as you are educating these young people with the end in mind and then showing them what this can look like. I was at the Eagles-Texans game and, saw Slim Thug out there performing, but I saw the Ocean of Soul out there as well. And, I can just imagine that none of those kids thought they would be on that kind of stage on an international platform, out there performing with an internationally known artist, and an opportunity to use their gifts and articulate who they are through those instruments, I think is very, very powerful. Dr. Dorsey, let's talk about HBCUs in particular and their role in the Infinite Scholar Program.
Well, Dr. Cofield, if you had asked our CEO, this was one of his biggest things. He is a huge proponent, and pushing of HBCUs. He is understanding the HBCU, understanding the culture that comes with the HBCU, understanding the educational legacy, understanding the importance of being able to give back to the HBCUs. If you talk to some of us, I didn't learn probably until maybe like about 4 or 5 years ago, the real value of a HBCU, the history of a HBCU. I come from New York. I didn't see the civil rights the same way that people in the South saw them. I didn't see the HBCUs were fighting for a seat at the table at Woolworths when in New York, my first job at 14 was at a Woolworths. And so the value, the community value, the community outreach, the legacy, the camaraderie that you have at an HBCU is something that's legendary. You haven't been able to experience. We just got finished talking about, I'm not a huge football fan, but when the HBCU has a classic or a game, everybody and their mother turns out. We're trying to get tickets. We're trying to get a hotel in New Orleans. Xavier is having homecoming. I'm like, my assistant is going out here like, can we get a hotel? The hotels are sold out, So right. That is the value and the camaraderie of HBCU and what it has done and the legacies. And you can go back and trace the history of them and why it is so important. HBCUs are important as far as Infinite Scholars. Now, we have a full plethora of schools that are going to be part of it, but I understand now probably more than I ever did in my early youth, the value of an HBCU and what they bring to the table as far as our students and community is concerned.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody to know we emanate from the campus of Texas Southern University, which is an HBCU. Like you, Dr. Dorsey, I'm from New York, but my father's from Alabama, actually grew up and spent a great part of his life. He was born in Talladega, Alabama, and lived in Lincoln, Alabama, which is about 40 minutes outside of Birmingham, between Birmingham and Atlanta. And what was interesting was I actually wanted to go to an HBCU. Now, my father was of that generation that believed in order to be best prepared to function in the world. And in some ways, I think maybe that the white man's ice is colder and is better. And so he was like, no, you going to this white school. This is where you going. And I'm like, yeah, but he was like, why you want to go to a black school? Why you want to go to the only person I knew that went to college went to Howard. And I saw her wearing her sweatshirt when she came home from Howard University. And I was like, I want to go to Howard. That's cool, And he was like, why do you want to go? And I was like, man, because I want the black experience, Dad. And he was like, look, you're going to be all your life, and white folk are going to give you enough of the black experience. You're going to go learn what these white folk got to teach you. But here's what I will say. 2 of my 3 children went to HBCUs. And what I learned that I did not understand at the time, and I'll attribute this back to Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath. He talks about a brilliant mathematician. She was genius. I mean, just excelled at every level, who decided to go to MIT, and instead of going to the University of Maryland, where she had a full scholarship. And he talks about the love of math being beat out of her at MIT. And he said, in essence, we lost a scholar in mathematics, because that system, while it looked impressive that she got accepted to MIT, is intended to kind of chew people up. You've got to survive the gauntlet, right? And as I was reading that, I thought about HBCUs. I thought about friends of mine who talked about basic lessons that they learned at HBCUs, lessons of manners. Take your hat off when you're inside. When you walk in the door, you speak to people and you look them in the eye, just some basic lessons. And then that nurturing environment. I've had people say to me, hey, I went to an HBCU and I sent my child. And when that child wasn't going to class, I got a phone call. Like I gave all the professors my number. And if you've been to a PWI and you're in that introductory psychology class and there's 250 people in that large university in that class, man, whether you show up to class or not, professors don't even care. They've got their tenure. They're already doing their teaching. Or if it's a graduate instructor, man, they're just there to disseminate information. They're not really there focused on your personal transformation. And you hear story after story of that nurturing environment that you get at an HBCU. Let's talk about how students can register as we get ready to come to a close. They can go online and register at infinitescholar.org. That's INFINITESCHOLAR, infinitescholar.org, and they can register for the event. For those who may be just tuning in, let me just remind you, you want to bring multiple copies of your high school transcript. You want to bring your ACT or SAT test scores, letters of recommendation, and an essay titled Why I Want to Attend College. And if you can bring a resume, and if you don't have a resume, here's what I want to know, Dr. Dorsey, because I can imagine somebody saying as they're listening, man, my child hasn't taken the SAT or the ACT, or they don't have letters of recommendation, or whatever the case may be. Can they still come and interact and get information and connect with colleges and universities? Because I can imagine there's some people who may be waiting until the spring to get started, and they may be listening now saying, you know what, we need to get started now. Can they come to really just interact and experience what Infinite Scholars has to offer?
Dr. Cofield, I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the things I was going to interrupt you earlier, just to make sure that you let you know. If a student hasn't taken an SAT or ACT, still come to attend, because remember, Infinite Scholars, our responsibility is to put the colleges in front of you. And each college has a different experience, as well as the military having a different experience. And so you're going to be able to gauge exactly what's going on there. You're able to advocate for yourself and tell your story. You're able to explain how come you haven't taken an ACT or SAT. But more importantly, you're going to put yourself in front of that college and university. They're going to have your information. And I've seen them do that. Okay, your test scores are not exactly where it needs to be, your GPA. But hey, your application is in my system. I'm going to put a star in it. Now you got my business card. You got my name and number. You can directly reach out to me as the score changes, as the year changes. It's the same thing with the military. Damon may say, you need to have this type of score on your ASVAB in order to be able to have this. Well, guess what? That score may not be where it needs to be. And you, just like you said earlier, the more you take the test, the better your test scores will be. But guess what? Now you got a name and number, and you can pick up the phone and call Damon. It's like, Damon, look, here's my new test scores. Where my money? And he might answer you. He don't answer me. He'll answer you as a student. I'm only messing with him, you know. But the fact is, Dr. Cofield, now you're going to know people who know people. When you can pick up the phone and call somebody, you don't have to call an 800 number to call the school. You're going to know directly to that representative. You know their name and number, specific extension, their email address. They give you their TikTok. They give you their social media, everything. And that's what you need to know. It is not what you know, it's who you know sometimes to get in. Dr. Cofield, I know we're cutting into our time, but I do want to tell the story. Tashika and I were in Atlanta recently. A student walked in. You know, COVID has ravaged, and Christopher can tell you this, our education system for our students and whatever. It has been a mess. A student walked in, Dr. Cofield, with a 1.1 GPA. One of the colleges, Webster University out of St. Louis, was there. And the lady looked at her like, she looked at me like, what am I supposed to do with a 1.1? Christopher, you know, you barely even gonna graduate with a 1.1. But that young lady was able to articulate how COVID had affected her, how her mother had died during COVID, how the family had died. She wants better, but it just put her 2 years behind. After listening to her story with no test scores or whatever, they offered her on the spot a $13,000 scholarship with the idea that they should be able to take as she went through over this next year or so to be able to do this. Dr. Cofield with a 1.1 because she was able to tell her story about why it affected her. That's why you, even if you don't have it, you come. Tell your story.
Man, that's a powerful testimony. Just tell us a little bit about some of the schools that will be present. I know we have about 22 schools registered right now, and they are coming every day, more coming online who are committing to coming. But talk about some of the schools that have worked with you all down through the years, including in Birmingham, on your way to New Orleans, going to Tampa. Just tell us some of the schools that are coming who are putting money on the table, because for somebody who's listening, we're talking about real money. And in the midst of people fighting hard, trying to get government forgiveness for student loans, man, when somebody can give you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, that is life-changing, not just for you while you're in school, but what's going to follow you after school. Because listen, when you take out those loans and you're in college, you're not paying them back. You just happy, you glad, you there. But when you graduate, you know, that's when Uncle Sam starts knocking on the door saying, hey, you know, now you got to start paying back this loan. Talk about some of the schools that are participating in the program.
Dr. Cofield, we were just talking about it in Atlanta. Webster University was there. Webster University is out of St. Louis. The gentleman at Webster who was head of their diversity and inclusion area of recruiting, they gave away in 2 days $8.7 million in scholarships. Just that. And they were like, okay, so listen, we want to be a major player. We want to be with you. They travel with us all the time. Alabama A&M, when we first got started, Alabama A&M used to come in with a crew of 3 or 4 different recruiters. They would bring their own printer because they were doing so much information. Talladega College, Claflin University. Michael Ziegler walks out of Claflin University with a briefcase that's so high. He was like, listen, I'm so tired, I can't even do anything else. The little young man at Lane College the other day walked out of there with 125 applications in one day. The gentleman from Claflin was giving out, $80,000 scholarships to students who were there on a regular basis. Dillard University is there, a full ride. Florida A&M is there. Stillman College is there. And then we've got the PWIs. There's a college that's there called Verto. Verto does learning abroad, study abroad learning or whatever. Right. It's a whole great big process that I have. I was like, King's College is there. Dr. Cofield, there's a college that's part of our network that's not there. If you want to go to college for free, there's a college, and there's several of them, but one of the ones that we interviewed the other day is called Berea. Berea is out of Kentucky. If you come from a family that's lower income, you can go to Berea for absolutely free.
Wow. That's powerful. Well, listen, let's get ready to close out because we got to go. But man, this is so powerful. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to the staff and volunteers of Infinite Scholars. There is a program that is being held at the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. We're privileged just to host it, but we're inviting students from all over the region who are looking for money to go to college. Free money, not loans. These are scholarships. These are grants to help you go to college. If you want to break cycles of poverty, one of the most powerful ways to do it is to get an education, to expose yourself and position yourself to do even better in life, whether it is a 4-year school or a 2-year school, whether it's the armed services, a viable post-secondary experience that's after high school is necessary in order to better position you to be the best that you can possibly be. Dr. Dorsey, let me ask you to give us some thoughts, and Christopher Knight, who is our Houston liaison, give us some final thoughts and a final message to our listening audience.
One of the things, Dr. Cofield, that I'm a firm believer in is collaboration. Infinite Scholars could not have had the success that we have had without the collaboration of the Army ROTC program, and without the collaboration of our local community organizers. We're in the Botwell Auditorium here in Birmingham. But more importantly, I would like to thank Christopher Knight, and I would like to thank you, Dr. Cofield, because as Christopher will tell you, we went to Houston last year. And of course, I'm not familiar with the community. That was my first time being in Houston, and it was challenged. Well, guess what? Christopher was there. He saw what we could do with a little. Imagine what we could do with a lot. And that's why he came to you and said, I've seen what this looks like. I can imagine what we're doing with that. And so he took me to the frat house and introduced me to everybody and had me speak there. And so now that we've taken this, and I think, Christopher, we had maybe 20 colleges last time. So we're going to have some 30 some odd colleges, and we like our community sponsors. So thank you all to the community in Houston. Thank you all for welcoming us. Thank you for inviting us to be out there. We're so looking forward to it. This will be Tashik's first time in Houston. And so she's like, can we stay an extra day or so? So we're both looking forward to seeing everything that Houston has to offer and to changing the lives of the students and their families, the trajectory of them as far as their post-secondary education is concerned.
Christopher Knight, what's some final thoughts you want to share?
Parting words. So I've always been taught that you judge a nation by how much they invest in their youth. And through this program, I'm so excited about the event that's going to happen on Friday. This is our opportunity to serve our students, our youth, so that they can have a better future than we've had. And so I hope to see, claiming it now, hopefully to see more than 500 people to show up to this actually event.
Well, listen, I want to thank both of you and actually all four of you for being with us on today. And I tell you what, Ms. T, you coming to Houston for the first time. Christopher Knight will tell you one of the baptisms when you come to Houston, you got to go to Frenchie's and get some chicken. And we'll get you some barbecue over at Ray's or Burns, and make sure you get a good taste of that if you are a meat eater. Let me thank our listening audience for being with us. The late Vernon John said, if you see a good fight, get in it. I always add, if you don't see a good fight, start one. And the fight for education is a fight that you actually want to get involved in, especially when it is your own education. Those of you who have young people, those of you who know young people, and if you're listening right now, school counselors, school teachers, wherever you are in the educational network, get some of these young people that are under you to come out to the Infinite Scholars Scholarship Program on Friday. We're going to be here from 9 a.m. to 12:30, 2 to 5. We're trying to get students to come, trying to get the school district to bus some of their kids here. This is free money. There are thousands of colleges that are out here that want to help you get your degree, help you move forward in life. So whether it's a junior college or a four-year college or the armed services, you can get that post-secondary after high school educational experience. I want to thank you for being with me on Real World, Real Talk. Listen, go to infinitescholar.org in order to register for the event. You can get all of the information you need right there, infinitescholar.org. And who knows, we may see some of you at Texas Southern University. Until next time, God bless is my prayer. Stay tuned for Truth with V. Michael McKay, David Goldstein, and the rest of our crew.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real World, Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes every week. Follow us via social media using the @RWRTDZ username on all platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To submit any comments, questions, sponsor opportunities, or future show suggestions, visit us online at rwrtdc.com or via email at info@rwrtdz.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've been inspired to be the change you want to see in the world today. Until next time, be real, keep it real, and stay real.